Item number 9, professional services agreement with RMC Water and Environment for wastewater treatment facility improvements. Mandy?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Under this item, I'm going to recommend to award a professional services agreement to RMC Water and Environment of Walnut Creek. And I would like to introduce Mr. Dave Richardson, their Senior Vice President and Principal in charge of the project. He's here with us. So this award will be to award the agreement to prepare a pre-designed report for the next phase of the improvements at the wastewater treatment facility. So a little bit about history on our wastewater plant. The plant was originally constructed in 1972. And currently its permitted capacity, the permit that we have is 10.5 million gallons per day. And the current average flow that we receive at the wastewater plant is 6.5 million gallons a day. So the wastewater facility consists of various process units. Through each process unit do its job to finally treat the water to before we discharge to the river or to the percolation ponds. So each process unit has been in service for over 40 years, 24 hours, 7 days a week. So currently we are facing some challenges. Number one challenge is the rehabilitation of the 40-plus-year-old facility. And second challenge is staying in compliance with our current NPDES permit, the discharge permit that we have received from the state, and also anticipate for the future discharge and get ready for the future anticipated permits. And also the future demand for the city's growth. And the next challenge that we have is the relocation of our treated wastewater discharge diffuser in the Feather River. On the next slide, so this picture shows the aerial picture of our wastewater treatment facility and the various process units that the water and solids go through. Next slide. This slide shows the process units that we are being proposed for pre-design for the next phase of improvements. In addition to these shown process unit, we are going to recommend the new septic receiving facility that will eventually get funded through the septic haulers, electrical and instrumentation improvements at the facility, and the facility's outfall relocation in the Feather River. Next slide. So this is our existing outfall in the Feather River. Back in 2011, because of some changes in the river, our existing outfall got exposed, and it stays out of water for most of the year. So we cannot discharge through this diffuser into the river. So since then, we have been using our percolation ponds, which are also located in the Feather River floodplain. And as part of our negotiations with our past permit with the state board, we talked about relocating, and the board wants us to relocate our the diffuser. And we have made some progress. We have conducted some study to find some potential locations, and a potential location has been recommended downstream of the Shanghai Bend Falls. And under this project, we will be looking at final selection of the location, some environmental documents to get the required permits, and in addition, we will be also looking at some other alternatives that if we avoid construction of the new outfall, what are other alternatives available, such as recycling opportunities. So we will be looking at all those alternatives. The next slide shows the list of the improvements that are being recommended for the pre-design. And next few slides shows some pictures, and I will briefly describe. The bar screens are, this is where the wastewater plant starts from, where all the city's wastewater goes and flows through the various process units. So these bar screens have been in service since 2005, and they're really difficult to maintain and repair. Staff's safety is also a concern during repairs. And we called the engineer from the manufacturer last year, and he was helpful, but the main issue still remains. So during the pre-design, we will be looking at some options, that what are the alternatives for the new technologies, because we have some room to put new additional units. And one of the alternative would be to repair these existing bar screens and to install a new technology that is easy to maintain, and keep and make that new bar screen as a primary unit and keep these existing one as backup. The secondary clarifiers. So we have 3 secondary clarifiers. So this is the last process unit where that gives the opportunity for the solids to settle down before we disinfect our wastewater and treated water before it goes to the river. With the plant's variable loadings, because of SunSuite, sometimes it becomes really difficult and impossible to keep the process units in control to stay in compliance. This additional, we will be recommending to do pre-design on installing a new secondary clarifier, which will provide additional capacity and also will provide a redundancy so that we can take one of the existing clarifiers out of service and maintain it. Right now we cannot, because we do not have any redundancy at all. And as part of this project, we will also be looking some other alternatives if we can avoid installing a secondary clarifier, and what are other alternatives, such as installing membranes. Next slide. The digesters. So previous studies show that digester lids needs to be replaced. They're structurally, there's some issues structurally. And so the pre-design will do a comprehensive condition evaluation to perform, to see what improvements are needed to in the digesters, including the digester lids, the gas mixing system, the better the quality for the digester sludges. We will have, if the digesters are working very efficiently, then we have less solids to dispose. That ultimately reduce the cost. In addition to that, we will also be looking at some options for the cogeneration facility, because we generate methane gas, and if we can utilize that gas to produce electricity, that can be used on site. The dewatering facility is the facility downstream of the digesters, where the digester sludge goes and we dewater it, and then it goes to the landfill through a contract with Recology. And we have only one belt press. There's no redundancy on that one. So currently we are doing some pilot studies. Some technology manufacturers are bringing their small scale units. They're testing like each manufacturer for a week for our sludge. That pilot test study will be used for evaluation in the pre-design report to freeze the final design ideas. So as part of, in order to start these projects, we send requests for proposals to 5 engineering consultants. And out of those 5, we received 3 proposals from the 4 consultants, because one consultant, Brown and Caldwell, teamed up with RMC Water and Environment. So those proposals were reviewed by the city staff and a retired wastewater professional. The next slide. This slide shows the criteria that was used to review the proposals. The proposals were reviewed and they were ranked. And then we had an internal meeting with the staff, looked at their scope of work and negotiations on the cost estimates. And based on that, staff recommends award a professional services agreement, next slide, to prepare a pre-design report to RMC Water and Environment. And the pre-design report, next slide please. So the pre-design report will include the condition assessment of the existing process units, and it will also include the analysis of the potential available alternatives. And it will provide recommendation for the selection of the final alternative, and so that we can freeze the design idea for the final design. And then once the pre-design work is complete, staff will return to the council with a recommendation for the next phasing of the project for its construction. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mandeep. Before we discuss this item, I just wanted to comment. I understand that Councilmember Buckland or Vice Mayor Buckland is willing to go down and clean the bar screens. Is that what I understood? So I just wanted to make that clear before we started discussion tonight. But
send me in.
Thank you, Mandeep. Go ahead.
Mandeep, I just want to get a couple of things clarified that you said. First, that 43 is old, right?
Yes.
And I appreciate the fact that you showed pictures, because everything you were talking about was the last conversation I had with my doctor. I mean, almost item for item. So I guess much of, that plant is much like the human body. And I'm just glad that your recommendation wasn't just replace the whole thing. So that was helpful to me. On the outfall unit, have we looked at teaming up with someone like OPUD, where we might be able to utilize the same diffuser inside the river, if that was possible?
Well, the staff, there are pending discussions with the Linda County Water District. They do not have any outfall, and they're also looking for some potential outfall in the river. And there is an opportunity, and we are going to continue that discussion so that we can regionalize. We can put a regional outfall out there. Definitely that we are going to discuss that with them.
And I commend you on the potential looking at the ability to be able to use wastewater and alternative methods within our community, or even whether we can clean it up good enough to put back out on a resale purpose. So thank you very much.
Also, Mandeep, I had a question. You have 3 different companies here. 2 of those proposed a negative declaration, and the third, RMC, proposed having a complete environmental. Are the 2 lacking in saying that we could do this with a negative declaration, and that we're going to at some point need that environmental document also? Could you just, because it's a big difference. I mean, we're talking $500,000 plus here difference on this. So I just need to understand if the other 2 are lacking and it really needs to be done, and they would come to us down the road and say, oh, by the way, it's going to be an additional $500,000 for an environmental study on this process also.
Yep. Well, definitely, I can answer part, and also I assume that Mr. David Richardson can also help me out. The 2 other consultants that are proposing the negative declaration, they're just assuming that we do not need to do the EAR. If we do have to do the EAR, then it will be an additional charge. So RMC's assumption is that we may need EAR, and if we will start with the negative deck. If that is sufficient, we will stop right there. So I assume that answers your question.
How much difference would be in their proposal if they didn't have to do the ERR?
If we have to just do the basic environmental, so we are talking about $350,000.
I don't know, maybe you'd like to address that for us. That's of concern to me because that's a big number.
Yeah, yes, as Mandeep had said, if we were able to use the mitigated negative declaration approach, the cost of doing that work is about $200,000, and we would have the $350,000 saved by avoiding the EIR. So that does help explain the incremental cost of going forward to the full EIR. The reason we think for most of the improvements at the plant, mitigated negative declaration would be fine. It's once we get outside the plant boundary, we're talking about an outfall and where the ultimate treated wastewater is disposed of or reused. That's what is going to drive the EIR.
All right, thank you.
Through the mayor.
Go ahead.
I will attest to the fact that the state will, and environmental groups will definitely try to guarantee that we have to do an EIR if we go outside the property. The county, you sneeze sideways and they were requiring it for anything that touched water. So thank you for putting that in there. I appreciate your putting it that way as an option up front and being honest about the possibility of the cost. That goes a long way on credibility. Thank you.
Through the mayor, just a question for Mandeep. I know we've got 3 companies, and I know the company you're selecting is a great company and they're reputable and stuff. But I think as far as a study, this is probably one of the largest studies we've done to see if our 43-year-old is old enough or do we need to replace or not. I mean, at $1.4 million, I think, and I guess you guys can attest to that too. This is probably one of the largest studies that we've done for something at this level. And I don't know, was this the only 3 companies that responded, or was this the only 3 companies that could do this particular type of work?
Well, we sent the request for proposals to 5 consultants that we have good experience working them in the past, and they are top notch in the wastewater industry. And out of those 5, we received 3 proposals. And on these 3 proposals, 4 companies responded. Actually, one of the company teamed up with RMC Water and Environment, and another consultant to RMC is a consultant who helped us to do our emergency project for a couple of years ago underneath that installing the line. That is one of the consultants to RMC. So there are other consulting firms as well. So we decided to just send only request for proposals only to the 5 consulting firms. And as far as the cost concerns, they're similar, they're comparable.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments of council?
If there isn't any, I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation for hiring this consulting firm and put that.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mandeep.
Through the mayor, I do just want to let our youth commissioners know, just hang on. We've got another hour of budget discussions and approvals. We should get to that by 8 o'clock.